Nearly every video game for the longest time was presented from a single perspective. The perspective doesn't change in Pac-Man. Turtles in Time moves with the characters, but it's always the same view. Top-down, isometric, flat 2D, the perspective you got was the perspective you got. As more 3D technology emerged, the player was able to move the camera as they saw fit. But technical limitations meant that many still continued with a single perspective behind the player, even in 3D worlds, though maybe it was able to rotate a bit. Meanwhile, the point-and-click genre was presenting worlds from all sorts of angles. Static, but also changing from scene to scene, like a movie. Every new location was something to appreciate artistically on multiple levels, in a way that was different from many other genres. The mid-90s saw more ventures into 3D spaces with first-person shooters and 3D platformers, but it was Super Mario 64 that really brought the idea of explore a 3D world to the masses. You had to be there, but that game blew everyone's minds. From kids up to their grandparents, they knew they were seeing something special. You could really move the camera to look all around and change the moment-to-moment framing to suit you. It was amazing, and it paved the way for the Zelda games and other 90s 3D classics. But over on the PC, and eventually the PlayStation, another type of 3D game was growing in popularity, taking the exploration, horror, and puzzle solving often found in the 2D point-and-click genre and expanding it into 3D spaces, attempting to include real-time combat. Not yet able to create large, believable worlds to navigate, fixed camera angles were used for focused, evocative, cinematic framing, which allowed developers to use painted image backgrounds to bring a lot more detail to the screen. 1992's Alone in the Dark, essentially the grandfather of this video game style, showed how this could be done. It inspired other studios to try and set the stage for what would come with the big breakout hit Resident Evil in 1996, the series and now entire genre of survival horror that has gone on to be the example that people think of when you say fixed camera. Static angles, flipping when the player crosses the trigger line of the room, or rotating angles, tracking the player from a fixed point, and steering the character like a tank, where up is always forward no matter the angle. The control scheme worked well for games that would snap to dramatically different angles constantly, so holding up would always keep your character moving where you want them to go. But it's also a control scheme that puzzles many people. You gotta rewire your brain to make it work. Once you do, it becomes natural, and many people even today come to learn it and enjoy playing the games that use it. But some people absolutely hate tank controls no matter how much they try. And I get it, in a way it's counterintuitive even if there is logic to it. And it's fairly limiting. Characters are pretty stiff when moving this way. In recent years, games have shown us not only that fixed camera can be evolved and improved to create a smoother user experience for modern times, but also that 3D analog controls can work as an alternative to tank controls. Tormented Souls, Signalis, the RE1 remake, all offer tank controls and an analog stick option, though it's impossible to actually balance the game for both. And it's not just horror. We see these angles in classic action games. Devil May Cry, which originated as a Resident Evil sequel, has its dramatic static shots of the castle, and different fixed angles during combat. From the side or from above, diagonal, the player is now able to move fluidly with modern analog stick 3D controls. But like their fixed camera horror brethren, the player is largely not in control of where the camera sits. It may move, tracking the player, switching to other perspectives depending on where you are, but you aren't free to just position the camera wherever you want at any time. And then in spaces free of combat, the developers can script the camera to move in interesting, even epic ways that a player-controlled camera never could, creating moments of awe. The God of War games took this style of camera in the action game space and essentially perfected it, creating amazing cinematic scenes and framing combat spaces in various ways while also doing a wonderful job at preserving player visibility for the most part. The player doesn't move the camera, it is directed to show you the experience as the developers intended. Fixed camera can give you a true sense of scale, seeing your character up against a giant world. It can set up a jump scare for James as he gathers the flashlight from Mary's dress and the camera cuts to the monster rising from the ground behind it. It can pull back as Kratos fires a spear at Helios, revealing the Chimera in the shadows, and then settle in to frame the combat space in a way that preserves the view of the Titan Atlas in the background. Detractors of this camera style will point to the fact that sometimes it can lead to obstruction, even disorientation, taking surprise damage, misjudging a jump distance, or having to fire blindly at an off-screen threat you can't see but your character definitely would. And in the horror space, detractors are particularly unfond of the tank controls. Whatever the 3D game is, be it survival horror game or adventure game or hack and slash, there will always be some kind of trade-off when it comes to using a camera system that is not in the player's control. You have to decide for yourself, do you value video game cinematography or not? Are you okay with an occasional bullshit camera obstruction if it means you get to take in the beautiful presentation of the world from the people who are taking the time to meticulously frame every shot? For me, it's easy. Yes, I'm okay with the negatives that come with fixed camera, because I just love the feeling that I'm in control of a character in a well-directed movie. Dramatic angles and music, maybe no ammo counter or health bar on screen. As a kid, Resident Evil 1 was the only game my mom would sit down and watch me play, and she said it was because it was like watching a horror movie. The camera and direction are a huge part of why she felt that way. Looking at a scene in Resident Evil is just like looking at a scene from Halloween, with those cold static shots that let the audience just sit in the perspective, or moments of Laurie Strode walking towards the camera frightened as the audience can't see what's in front of her. Walking into a new fixed camera angle also draws our attention to details of the room that we otherwise wouldn't have even given a second thought to, because the way a painter or photographer or cinematographer frames a space gives different levels of importance to the objects in it. And fixed camera means more focused attention on rooms that have valuable items, so they're easier to spot with the eye. This means we can avoid the awful trend of intrusive indicator bubbles that are placed in modern games because the player is always swirling their view around. When you can't direct a player's attention, you have to shout at them with symbols. It works okay in an arcadey action game, but in horror it's just annoying. Being able to direct the view so that players have to look towards the items means you don't have to do this. The creators of the first Resident Evil wanted to do it in first person, but they felt limited by the early 90s technology, so they went with a fixed camera system and pre-rendered painted backgrounds to give it a more realistic look than any first-person game could provide at the time, and they easily could have just framed each room from similar angles that led to the most player comfort. But they didn't. They chose to take the visual style seriously and instead framed each space carefully to evoke different feelings. Close-up shots coming through a door letting us see our character, top-down angles in a claustrophobic space, corner views of a long dining room, ceiling-level angles of the second floor so we can see what's below, low angles presenting an intimidating doorway. It means something to us. We wouldn't go wild for a man's 5-year-long project to mod Resident Evil 2 Remake into a fixed camera game if we didn't love it. I wouldn't be able to talk at length solely about my 25 favorite Resident Evil camera angles if these shots didn't make me genuinely feel something. They wouldn't have recreated the opening crane shot of Silent Hill for the movie if the cinematography of that game wasn't crucial to the experience. I often hear the argument that fixed camera was only used because of the technical limitations of the time and therefore we should leave it behind. But I would argue that every genre is a product of the limitations of its time. Before we had 3D graphics at all, everything was 2D, right? Does the existence of 3D Mario make 2D side-scrollers obsolete? No, it doesn't. We still have top-down games and isometric games. The invention of 3D fighting games didn't render 2D fighters obsolete, they coexist. Why is fixed camera the only style that has to go and is somehow invalid to appreciate now? What boggles my mind is how vehemently some people are against even the concept of fixed camera games. It's not that they just aren't interested in them, they are upset that people want them at all. We're apparently insane even enjoying indie titles that deliver us new fixed camera experiences. Go online and talk about your love for classic survival horror games and it won't be long before people show up just to shit on the camera style. I will never understand the anger it inspires in some people when you're just enjoying a fixed camera game, or they see a new one come out, or someone says they wished they made a new one for them in their favorite series that's gone modern. I understand that they value the comfort and freedom of a free camera, but I value something else, and that should be okay. I value not having to adjust the camera myself every 3 seconds so I can just focus on what I'm doing and seeing in the game. And I value survival horror games that aren't built on precision targeting headshots and kneecaps. Cameras that use these changing, directed angles are also essentially refreshing a part of the experience all the time. A game in first person is always that view. Over the shoulder is always that view. But when the camera is always framing things differently, moving differently, there's something new to appreciate, and for me that adds to the replayability. When I replay RE2 Remake, it's always focused on the gameplay. When I replay the original, I'm also admiring how every room is framed. And I get it, it's not for everyone. I know that we aren't going to see AAA games with fixed camera. Ninja Gaiden used to have fixed camera and it had a lot of problems, and now Ninja Gaiden 4 is just a fully player-controlled camera with every room framed the exact same way. Devil May Cry 5 did the same thing. God of War ditched the epic cinematography and put the camera over Kratos' shoulder like a third-person shooter. New God of War looks and even controls similarly to Resident Evil 4, the game that popularized the over-the-shoulder perspective. Both games even have tank controls. Kratos has to turn to the side to move that way, just like Leon does. In the 21 years since RE4 came out, over-the-shoulder camera has become the way to make games. You're either right up on the shoulder or you're pulled back more, but it's always with the character to the side. It's a great camera perspective, near and far, but it's funny to me that this camera style, originated in 2005, is what's considered modern, yet fixed camera games from the same time or a few years before are supposedly outdated. And now every big budget horror game is an over-the-shoulder third-person shooter with precision headshots and de-limbing, with the player able to freely look around the room. I like some of these games, they're fun, they play well, they have better combat and less frustration in some areas, but something's been lost. Horror and action games have been homogenized into experiences that, in ways, play the same, but really they all look the same. Could you tell the difference between all these games if you didn't already know them? Intentionally framed camera perspectives allow games to have truly unique presentations because the eye of every director is different. They'll choose to frame things in their own way. You can't do that if the player is in control. Fixed camera games are in a unique position to create their own visual identity through camera framing in addition to everything else. One reason I suspect a lot of studios just give the player control of the camera and call it a day is because they don't want to put the time into choosing the right angle for every moment of their game. It can easily be over 1,000 angles in just one game. If you're going to do it right, that takes a lot of time and testing and talent. Better to just let the player do it, I guess. That, and there's a lot of people that'll freak out and scream at them if the new Resident Evil or Devil May Cry doesn't let them have full control over the camera at all times. It's commonly said that people only like fixed camera games, especially horror, because of nostalgia. You grew up with these games, that's why you like them. And, you know, there's an aspect of truth. I think my history with this style does have something to do with my deep love of it. But it's certainly not true that it's the only reason. Not only have I delivered an abundance of reasons why people like it, but we also see lots of people, old and young, getting into fixed camera games now, for the first time, and loving them. Even the ones with tank controls. They say, you get used to the controls in 5 minutes. These games are great. Ask any content creator with any kind of reach, like Residents of Evil, The Sphere Hunter, Avalanche Jared, Jay's Reviews, Tango Mushi, or myself, and they'll tell you that all the time they hear from viewers who were inspired by them to finally check out the old fixed camera horror classics, and they fell in love. You don't have to be blinded by nostalgia, you just have to be open to the experience. First-person shooters are defined by their uniform perspective, the gameplay comes from it. But when the camera is separate, intentionally directed, you're granted the freedom of the art of cinema. You can do so much with it. If you're someone who has always been anti-fixed camera, I hope this video has at least helped you understand why people like it. That your anti-stance can change to simply a preference. We aren't saying every game has to use fixed camera like they used to. We enjoy how the quote-unquote modern games play, but I think it's reasonable for us to get a little of what we want too, from time to time. Take the opportunity to look at something with well-crafted intentional camera direction and see what we see. Maybe you'll never get into it yourself, but you'll get it. What's funny is that as I've gotten older and formed a keener eye for cinema, paying attention to the pacing of the edit, how different filmmakers establish their style through color choices, lenses, themes, the framing of the shot just becomes more and more interesting to me. Much more than a swirling sci-fi visual effects shot, as cool as it was, I'm impressed by the static shot of the falling rain angled downwards. I find myself focusing on how this shot from RoboCop frames his shadow on the wall, portraying him as a giant as he stands in front of the headlights. I am oddly fascinated by this angle in Reservoir Dogs, down the hall through a distant opening to the washroom that only shows Harvey Keitel as he talks to an off-screen Steve Buscemi, whose far more interesting erratic behavior is being kept from the viewer. Interesting direction choices. Every year I'm more aware of it. Every movie I watch now has at least one moment where I just go, wow, that's an amazing shot. And it could be of the simplest thing in the world, like a conversation or a man just pondering. My appreciation for cinematography only grows, and with it, so does my love for a good camera angle in a video game. I play something new like Flesh Made Fear, and the first thing I'm enjoying is the camera choices. We are out there, fans of this stuff, customers and developers alike. We are not a huge market, but we support new games when we can, and I'll bet a new, modest, mid-budget Resident Evil with an evolved version of a fixed camera would sell great just on the name alone, and it would be received well because it would be well made. Wow, somehow I have managed to show Resident Evil, God of War, Silent Hill, Doom, Mortal Kombat, and RoboCop in the same video. This is it, guys, right? Have we come to the end? What more could I do after this? This is getting too self-indulgent. I need to stop it here. I'll end this aimless, rambling video with a plug for some of my videos on the importance of Silent Hill's camera design and my top 25 angles of Resident Evil. I hope you've enjoyed this stroll through my mind, as I have been thinking about this stuff for years and just wanted to put it all out there in one video. See ya.